Finally, we meet.
Yes, no kidding.
I've been enjoying your project.
Oh, yeah?
The series. Oh yeah, it's a treasure. Really, it's a treasure trove.
So what interviews did you find particularly interesting, or did you align with?
I really enjoyed Marianne Williamson, and especially how she's really willing to look at the journey. And so she goes into political campaign and says, hey, I learned something from that. I didn't know that I needed to do certain things. And I thought it was really interesting what she said about one party really trains candidates and another one could do a better job of that. So she really is, that's central to what Tensegriti is about. So it was really interesting for me. Just that she's claiming her experience and the knowledge and not trying to externalize it and say, oh, it was, because of this, people weren't friendly or that didn't happen. It's like, hey, I didn't realize that I needed to do some more of this myself directly, Yeah,
and it's interesting to see people from that perspective trying to bring it into such a world as politics. I mean, that whole world just seems to be a world with its own set of rules that don't really have much to do with direct truth.
Yeah, well, and we could get into what is truth also. Yeah, direct truth. I don't think that was an ending with Marianne Williamson. I have a feeling it was a beginning. She said, even if I'm not the candidate, right, I'm going to support other candidates. And it just was a beginning of a new, to me, that's a new time. When you have someone like that who's running for office. She was really close. I would have, I could have had the pleasure to vote for her, but she's one district away from my voter registration. But I saw, locally that campaign, and it was very exciting. I really enjoyed Bruce Lipton also. Just his absolute joy about what he's sharing, and also there's so much richness, and our biology is such a vast, intelligent, right, and mystery also, and the biology of belief. I mean, it's really so much in there. I almost can't really summarize it for you.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Like I was saying, it's interesting that all these people from different perspectives, whether it's a biologist, a scientist, a politician, even though she's not necessarily a politician, they're pointing their light into all these different areas and bringing it to a more expansive, from my point of view, a more expansive idea of what it is, whether it's biology or socialism, whatever politics is.
Yeah, and I think that's really, if we look at what the opportunities in our day and age, our time, mm-hmm, it's that kind of convergence that I think is going to really make the difference, right, for human beings. It's like, can we integrate diversity? And that's what you're really showcasing. I think it's really exciting.
Actually, I'll ask you one more person. If you saw Jose Luis Parise, did you see his interview?
I saw a bit of it. And I saw you guys were talking about the ego and shamanism, and he's a psychotherapist, of course, so he's going to have a different thing. That was interesting, though. I could say something about that now for you if you want. First, Carlos, we really weren't talking so much about the ego. I thought it was interesting that he was saying that there's this warrior's way, and it needs to be clarified. We're at war against what? Right. And he, says the ego, and I'm like, that's very interesting, and I think there's some truth to that. For me, where we have to be careful, and he said it also, is if you start battling something, it's going to get bigger. And then the other issue is, for us, what is the ego? And he's got all the training to talk about that. Carlos would talk about the self, and he would talk about the me mind, and there's a little me and a bigger me. And so the self is really, Don Juan would say the self is at the core of everything that's rotten in human beings and everything that's sublime. So if we're not trying to get rid of the self, I think he said that too, I agree with him. We're not trying to get rid of an identity. We're just trying to get some other options and get around it. If you don't have any sense of self, how are you're not going to be able to show up to work or feed yourself, take care of yourself and take care of this vehicle and do anything for anybody if there's no sense of self. There has to be some passion about what you're doing, all that stuff. That's what was enjoyable about Bruce Lipton also, now that we're getting into it, is the way he was engaging with that. And he had that eureka moment. Marianne was saying, no, I don't go for the eureka moment. And it's really great. There's a spectrum of different experiences where we start to become aware of something that's bigger than us.
Right.
And so for me, it's been in stages. There's been different stages where it opens more. So that's the privilege if you get to follow a path. Is that
you go through the story. You go through the linear story and all the things that happen in that story.
And the nonlinear story too.
Right.
How, that you got the wheel of time as a description that the seers of Don Juan's line gave to time and experience. So you'll find yourself maybe spiraling through certain things. Oh, this is another turn, and wherever you are seems like it's infinite, because in that realm it goes on forever. But if you can shift to another layer of that wheel, that always has been and will be, and so on and so forth. That's infinite too. So,
well, let's get started, and we'll cover all these things in a more in a more direct fashion, perhaps. So, the first question, as you may have guessed, is how would you describe the state of the world today?
The state of the world. In order to describe that, I want to talk about fear, and I'm going to talk about this tradition has something we talk about, dreaming, the art of dreaming. And one of the key premises is the art of dreaming is the art of attention. And so dreaming is a very active process of how do we engage our attention. And if our attention is going to fear, then we could be doing something that you could even call nightmaring. We're not really dreaming. If it's all fear, 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 you read the news and you're seeing all these things that can create anxiety. What happens to the nervous system? We get into we can get into sympathetic overstimulation, overstimulation of that aspect of the autonomic nervous system. What happens to our gut if we're really focused on fear all the time? Well, the gut gets tight. We'll tighten up. We'll start to get into these very defensive postures and positions. And the premise of this lineage is that what you embody is also directly related to what you perceive. So if I'm doing this and I'm getting into fear, and it could be a subtle version, then I'm not really able to access the heart very easily. I mean, you could see just on a physical level, we're cutting off the link between the gut that has this, all this gut feeling, gut sense, this, and okay, forget about the heart when you're in that position. So if I can just literally on a physical level lift the sternum, get connected, if I'm sitting in the sitting position where it's easier to crunch down, and disconnect. Okay, how can I be in this position that we spend so much time in our day-to-day and allow that flow of this kind of older intelligence of the gut, an older nervous system, and the rest of my being, including the heart. Then I can start to relate. So the state of the world, the world it's a really big thing, but we can talk about one aspect is maybe we emphasize the fear too much, and we could emphasize love, we could emphasize joy, we could emphasize learning, we could emphasize sharing. There's so much more, we have, that's, Carlos Castaneda wrote about the art of dreaming, and the culmination of that description, he's coming to love is the highest form of intelligence. It's Carol Teagues that's saying that. His colleague, Don Juan, taught him to move with fear. Fear is what really gets the student to be motivated and to move and to shift and to change and to stay on the path. And she is saying, I dare to disagree, that there's love is greater than fear. And so that gets into what do we mean by love? I mean,
we'll get there, but is that also a male-female dynamic? I mean, does a male need to be kind of dealt with a little bit differently than a woman would on that route towards awareness?
Yeah, well, there may be some tendencies, what really and that gets into my journey with this, male, female, what is a male, what is a female, and it's really up right now in the collective awareness, what is a man, what is a woman. Definitely there'd be some differences with different students and the way they were taught in this lineage. Whether that's strictly male, female I'm not totally sure about that. It would definitely be part of Carlos's experience that he's coming in with. He came in with a lot of, that kind of warrior mood to begin with. And you could say that's a male construct, but there are for sure women that will come in, start on the path of knowledge, and it's going to be much, combat based for them too. Maybe the issues are different slightly, but it's really, I think, more an evolution of human beings, away from fear into love. Some people would call that, we're embracing the feminine. The way we were taught gender is a spectrum, and what's masculine and feminine, if we get black and white about it, we're out of perception pretty quickly, and we're starting to get back into a priori, males are this way, females are this way. There are certain features, and does that give one an edge over another? Not necessarily, really. They both have gifts and challenges within those energetic features that women have and men have. So we could get into that.
Physicality also affects that, does it not? I mean, our organs are different. Well, certain organs.
And for this lineage, the womb is the organ of direct perception. It's the organ of dreaming. Women have this built-in biological organ. The biological function, Carlos would talk about primary purpose, secondary purpose. Primary purpose, we're giving birth, and that can be looked at as dreaming a child. There's a lot of intention that goes into giving birth, if we're doing that consciously. And then the secondary function would be seeing new possibilities, dreaming new dreams, seeing new ways of being, new ways of interacting, new solutions. Is that quality and is that trait exclusive to females? No. But they have a natural ability. What my teachers talked about, yes, women have a natural ability, and they have to overcome this trait of taking it for granted.
Right.
And my experience is I will meet, we've been doing seminars since 1993 now, meet a lot of people, a lot of questions, and I will have men come up and tell me about a dream, and they're very excited, and they have super detail about the dream, and they're so fresh, and I'm thinking, that's amazing, that was your dream last night. And they said, no, that was 10 years ago. They didn't take it for granted. So it may have been 10 years ago. At the same time, they're really studying it and doing something with it. That takes us, female might just be like, meh, so we have to overcome that. And Carlos said that's not innate. That sort of meh is not at all innate. It's been learned.
Right.
And it's been socialized. So that's what we have to overcome, is that learned indifference. But there's a possibility. And then the male has, the one word is that they have this steady, step by step. They're going to hone toward knowledge. They're going to take the step and the step and the step. And they're going to, the female is going to go this way. She's ranging at things. We all have male and female inside as well. There are certain places, men and women, different people will do it differently, go about things differently, different training, different predilection. So that's really what we're really looking for, is integrate that steadiness and that openness for all of us. And we can all connect with that direct perception. We connect with the earth. That's a big mother that we're all connected with. So the men, they want to go direct. There's one way right there, your feet on the ground, instant connection as well. One of my start on this path, really one key turning point, was when I met Florinda Donner Grau at the Sisterhood bookstore. And I'd seen her 2 days before at the Phoenix bookstore, and then I saw her at the Sisterhood bookstore, and it is very symbolic. And she was looking at the female has this natural capacity for evolution. When you find new solutions, that's evolution, isn't it? And the seers of, that line talked about, when they talk about the evolutionary power of the womb, it's that ability to intend something new, And one possibility they look at is, what if the dinosaurs intended wings? And that's how birds came into existence. And humans can intend all sorts of things. We have a challenge if the women, the beings with wombs, where's their attention going? And when Florinda was giving this talk at the Sisterhood bookstore, she was talking about the Lysistrata, the play by Aristophanes. And she said that that's the play where the Spartan women say, all right, you men want to go to war, fine, but we're not going to sleep with you. And that's supposed to be a comedy. It's supposed to be a joke. And Florinda said, yeah, maybe it's funny, but it's not really a joke, because the women, up to, for a very long time, were giving all their vital energy. She would say, it's going to John. Does John look at me? Did John call me? Does John like my outfit? Right. And there's certainly a place to interplay, right? I mean, we don't have a species if we don't have a beautiful interaction between male and female, but we need a balance, and we need to let the female voice be present just on its not on its own. It's not going to work isolated. Neither gender is going to work in isolation, right? If we're all just steady eddies and there's no innovation, we're not going to get anywhere. And if there's only, oh, look at that new thing, and look at that new thing, and look at that new thing, and no development, we're not getting anywhere either. Right. And again, all of us have both of those
qualities,
tendencies.
So let's go back to something first you said, which is about fear. And it's kind of there's kind of an order to my question, just because it seems to me that conflict seems to be everything. The first question always leads to that we're a conflicted being internally, which is reflected in our external world, obviously. Now, what I always ask as well is do you see does your tradition say that conflict is actually a part of our evolutionary process? Is that a necessary part of our growth?
I think the whole point is learning. So however we're going to get there, and sometimes it seems to be through struggle. Is that necessary? No, it's not necessary. I don't know anybody who's lived without any struggles. There is an inner struggle, and I think that inner struggle has to do with what, we're trying to limit that vastness that's wanting to go through us, and that awareness that is seeing the world through our eyes and the other person's eyes and the tree's eyes and the animal's eyes and the planet's eyes, and the planet is sentient. And it's not, through their senses, through their perception. If we're trying to narrow it down, that is going to create a conflict. And that's inevitable because there's some part of us that's always, at some point in our lives, if not several times, it's going to crash.
And we live
It's not going to work because that expansion is going to be bigger than this little thing, and it's not going to wait for us at some point. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does for sure. And it seems like within that, the void that you're talking about, perhaps, we live in this bubble of polarity. And do we require to experience the heights of joy? Do we have to experience the heights of the lows of pain? In other words, is it that polarity and that contrast that really allows us to understand what possibility is for expansion, basically?
It seems to be that, some people call it contrast.
Right. Yeah, there's all sorts
that
of...
That is how we sometimes choose. It's also, if you're looking at awareness and aligning with the greater consciousness that you have, which this lineage would call the energy body or the energy being. If you are disconnected from that, that can teach you also, okay, that pain that you're going to feel will make you even be more determined. And sometimes for some of us, that's what's necessary. Some people have to hit the wall. And Carlos would say, sometimes you have an advantage if you've really, it hasn't worked for you. You come to a point in your life and there's failure. Failure is a great teacher. Does it mean that we consciously aim for failure? Of course not. He's like, hey, let's aim to succeed. Why not? But whether you succeed or you fail, you learn. You be humbled, by the success or be enhanced by the defeat. That's what was so inspiring to hear, Marianne Williamson talking about what she learned in a political campaign. So sometimes he would say he'd meet a lot of people, and the people that had really maybe hit the wall, there could be an advantage. Sometimes that's not enough either to stop us from the momentum of the small me, the fear. They're out to get me. They're not acknowledging me or whatever, one's particular brand is. Sometimes that is the great shift. It's like, hey, this really didn't work. I tried it my way. It didn't work. So then you're a little more open, or maybe a lot more open, depending, on the awareness, the experience. The willingness.
The small me, is that what Don Juan or Carlos would have described as the flyers? Or is everything that we experience just an influence of the infinite on us? Would you say that we're all fractals of that very thing that we're talking about?
When you say fractals, we are extensions of that, and I also like to look at it as holographic. That maybe we don't contain all parts of it, but we're connected to all of it.
Right.
And so Carlos debated about whether to really publish about what, Don Juan called the flyers or the voladores. That's an external, those are inorganic beings, meaning they don't have a physical body, physical form, but they have awareness. So they're these, and he would say, they'll feed on our awareness. If we're not using it, then they'll, feed on us, and that can create a lot of fear. That's the challenge, if you and be counterproductive. So we could go back into the fear. Oh my gosh, it's this huge enemy that I can't even see. And the real point was, he would say the deterrent to those beings is what he would call discipline. And discipline for him and for Don Juan, for our teachers, he described as the art of feeling awe. So it's maintaining that wonder, that openness, that aliveness, no matter what is coming. And that sounds really wonderful. And then when you want to put that into practice, we come into, I would have been fine, but Sarah wouldn't listen to my idea, or my neighbor was making noise and I couldn't really, rest, or you name it. And we could try to get ultra sophisticated and blame stuff on the flyers. Well, those terrible flyers, or the politicians, it's really easy to kind of complain. Right. So we could even take it to that level and just say, well, we've got these predators. I mean, and he would say, well, I'm only human. That's what we want. We're human, which is, wow, there's a lot of possibilities in this form. There's a lot of strength. There's a lot of resourcefulness. We have this energy being. We can travel anywhere in terms of our awareness. We can really access knowledge of all sorts through space and time. They're just for starters. And so which part of the human are you going to focus on? So for him, it's in a way, okay, noted. Let's note it. Throughout history, we've had this external mind that doesn't really care too much about this planet, for example. It's not from here. He would say one size fits all. It's sort of garden variety. I don't even want to say that because gardens are wonderful, but it's just really, one size fits all self-absorption, and right. Which is not the same as healthy self-care, right? It's that continuously going back to the fear of something's going to happen to me. I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not going to be good looking enough. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too big. I'm too small. And that is food. They don't control, any. But it still goes back to those external forces are not really the deciders. We are. Right. So if we don't indulge that, shift your focus somewhere. Take a breath. Exhale. First, before you take a breath, release a breath. And then you can get some fresh new air, some inspiration. You can go back to that state of wonder, of awe. And it's not necessarily a state of spacing out and there's, don't bother me, I'm in awe. Right. No, but it's just the absolute beauty and precision of everything that's coming our way. It's really a mirror to our vibration. So, he said that if you get past that particular predator, there's other more sophisticated ones waiting. So we can even have humor about that ultimately. It's like, look, can we be accountable for how we show up for things? Did I show up kind of helter-skelter and everybody else had to help me get there and then they didn't really do a good enough job? Or did I dream it? Did I know there's certain things I need to do, or rest, nurture, those types of things. Did I show up connected? Humans are waking up also. It's becoming more extreme. Some people are getting past that program of let's be in fear and blame and all that. There's a rising consensus to go away from it and get out of that. But what's also important to emphasize is that that's not by any means the only kind of inorganic being out there. And that's going right back into the fear, is to just project onto things that are unseen in the daily world that, they're all scary. That's coming from us, really. Right. It's coming from some of the choices that we make, and it's not to be blaming ourselves either, but we have the power really to step out of that, to exhale and let something else come in.
Would you say that there is a universal intelligence or a grand design?
There's definitely a universal intelligence that underlies everything we do. They're called it, it's many names for it in this lineage. One is the intent of infinity, something that connects to everything in the universe, and it's expanding. So the universe, infinity is not, we call it infinity, but it's not complete. It's as we expand our awareness, we meaning sentient beings, organic and inorganic, really, if we want to go there, it expands. so we're extensions of it, and that might seem to be a question of belief, but for this lineage, it's a question of practicality. Carlos would say, "Don't take my word; find out for yourself. See what happens if you consciously call intent, and notice what comes." And it's astounding for me. And it can be something really simple. It can be the parking space or the birthday gift for your niece or your nephew. That, okay, I'm going to pause, take a breath. I really want to find the perfect or something that will really speak to their heart, and get out of the way. And then you'll get an impulse. We'll call your sister. She knows what they want. Or go over here. Go to that library there. Or you'll find, you'll start getting impulses. Or someone will just call you up and start talking about this science kit that you didn't know about. Just something that simple. Where's that coming from? For this tradition, it's you connected your energy body, which is like another, you have a luminous sphere that surrounds and goes through this body, and then you have another smaller compact one they call the energy body. And that energy body is a great scout. You can, go ahead and find things if you ask, because it can connect to everything else. So it can connect to that greater intelligence directly.
What are the steps for a person that's not got someone to tap them on their shoulder and to move their sandwich point to see it all in an instant? What's the steps from your point of view to get that all in alignment, to get the energy body working?
It's interesting that you mentioned the tap on the back, because especially when we first started teaching workshops, people would say, "Hey, but you have someone to tap you on the back," and actually we didn't. Carlos did. But that was Don Juan's time, and it was his way. He was like, "I don't have that much time. I don't know how much time exactly I have, but I don't have too much." And he had to kind of put the knowledge of his whole lineage into these students in a short time. And he said the lineage ended with them. There's no, leader and party, and someone's going to tap you on the back. They decided to just open it out, and the keys that they brought out are the practices, the Tensegriti practices, like the magical passes as one. Those are designed to help us, first and foremost, shift the breath. Again, it goes back to the breath. Our orientation to the world is really tied into our breath. And if we're bracing in fear, we're not breathing very well, of course. And so that's a first step. Can you practice? It helps tune your energy fields. It also helps to just get the lymph flowing in the body. We don't have, we have all this water flow that should be happening, but a lot of times we've stopped it because we're sitting, or we're maybe eating things that for us personally don't really jibe, or we're thinking kind of stagnant thoughts. This is one unit. It's not separate. What we think is what we embody, really. And so they go together. So if we can shift, we'll have practices of you're mapping the body, waking up these centers that are physical centers, but they're also correspond to energetic nexuses that get the energy flowing in the whole body, in the whole luminous body. That opens us up. Now the energy is more available for some other possibilities rather than fighting other people, thinking that if I could just win my battle against, John or Susan, I'm going to be free. It's not really where the battle is. So we can get into that. But that's where the practice they call the recapitulation or the life review comes in. Okay, now I have a little energy. What am I going to do with it? A little more energy means I could have a little more concentration on what I'm doing in day to day. And it starts with what I'm embodying. How do I physically enter the scene? Am I shuffling in? And, you know, if I go to come to the meeting, that's energetically, this is conflict right here. You know, somebody else is talking, it's like, we're in battle already, and that's really a waste of energy. We're misaligned. It's, you know, you hear those stories about judgment. We're judging that a person, and it's like, who is it really affecting? It's ultimately affecting our alignment, our dreams, our ability to be of service, to live a higher purpose. So those practices, you know, the Tensegriti movement, the self-review, silence, those two can also help you get into silence. Dreaming, which means that we're looking for openings in our conscious waking awareness, and also at night when we go to sleep. How do we enter sleep? Can we do it in a way that we can actually recognize I'm dreaming? So these dogs that are chasing me, I could turn and just let them know, back off, you know? Or this really interesting text that I'm reading, maybe I'll write it down when I wake up, because we always think we're going to remember, but if we're conscious that we're dreaming, you might pay extra attention, and you have a better chance to remember, or it's endless. But those are the, you know, the main practices. Decision is another part, and that's what Carlos said. He said, it's not in my nature, it's not the way he did things to push your back and move your point of orientation. Right. He's like, it's your decision. You have to decide that that's what you want to shift, and these practices, you can do it, and you consistently over time a little bit. Also, we have the opportunity to practice together. That creates shifts that weren't available in prior times through that means. So they had to maybe do other things, but it was a hermetic, it was secretive. It was a secret tradition. So you didn't have large groups of people practicing together. You didn't have a seminar with several hundred people looking at their life and a specific aspect of their life together. And so you know, another practice that ties all those together is something that he called theater of infinity. It's something that evolved through the lineage. Especially there was in the wall Julian, who was an actor before he, you know, got involved with this lineage. Nawal meaning somebody who has a direct contact with the energy body and who has taken up this training, this seer's training, these practices. So theater of infinity ties it all together, where we're looking at what part am I playing? And maybe there's certain roles that we maybe repeat, one or two roles, and really our nature as human beings, our capabilities are playing many, many parts in our lives. So, you know, I have specific parts that I will play. We could get into that, or we could get into that later. You know, over time I get to learn, you know, that's really repetitive. And I'll go to battle to keep trying to play that part. And it's not taking me anywhere. That's what we would call the theater of the finite. You know, I'm going to repeat. And it's really different expressions of fear. Right. So in my case, the example would be, Carlos would say early on, we would be meeting to practice Tensegriti at a studio together, he and his female colleagues and his students. And he would tell the whole room, Найи thinks she's a genius. And I said, why is he saying this? You know, I don't think I'm a genius. Einstein is a genius. Why is he saying that? I never said I was a genius. You know, and I thought, well, it's just my task somehow to not react to it, not get into it. No, if I really look at it over, and it's funny now. I didn't think it was funny then, okay? It's funny now, but it's not totally, you know, gone. I have to be vigilant. But what if I really look at what I carried into the room, I expected to be listened to. And I expected people, and I really thought I was right. And I had pretty much zero doubt in any topic that you bring to me. I could quickly grasp it and have an opinion on it. And that is ultimately, if the goal is expanded awareness, it's an insane stance, you know? So this part of the genius has certain physical postures that go with it. It has certain breath patterns. It has certain inner dialogue that goes with it. And gee, you know, when it came time for me to step out of that role, like in order to function day to day, I almost couldn't function. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how ingrained it was. And there's been stages of that over time. There's still, you know, days I'm like, well, why doesn't she want to hear my insight? Right. Because that's not the part to play today. The part would be maybe let's expand the repertoire. You know, a really great actor will be able to play different parts. So what about the part of enhancing someone else's idea? And in my case, especially another woman's idea. We're back to the sisterhood bookstore. So that's something, that's a theater of infinity. My old role would be to be kind of overtly or covertly really edging one way or another that I'm going to get whoever I think is the dominant male in the room. I'm going to be number one. I'm going to get their attention one way or another. And for me, it was through verbal stuff. I learned to read early, and that's what he said. She thinks she's a genius because she could read when she got to first grade. And I thought, oh, he exaggerates. He didn't. He didn't. And he has a great sense of humor. He wasn't running me down, and he didn't do that. That was not, he wasn't running me down. He just really, if he took you on and he wanted to help you, that he couldn't do a push in the back, but he could reflect to you. Right. You know, he cared enough in that sense to give it a go. Let me give that reflection. It was a real quandary for me because, you know, this is somebody in front of you that by the time I met him, he's a very seasoned, very conscious being. He had more energy than anybody around him. You know, I don't know how old he was or wasn't, and I really don't care. You know, it's not my concern, but he had a ton of energy. He was working on several books. He did, you know, there were 3 books that came out in the last year of his life. I worked with him on those books, and he had a whole garden that he cultivated. He had all people that he would. He didn't call himself a teacher, but for want of a better word, we'll say students. He who knows what else? Okay, I'm just sort of saying. So, and he did it all impeccably with great enjoyment, great flair, great precision. And he would always tell us that too, to have a ball, have a ball. You know, we're going to a seminar and we're teaching for the first time, or it always seemed like the first time because there's always something, whatever the topic is. Yeah, and he would say, have a ball, just enjoy yourself pink. And he did. So how can we do that? It's just a little step at a time. Being aware, practice some breathing, exhale longer than the inhale, do some breathing magical passes, or Tensegriti movement is another name for them, that name inspired by Buckminster Fuller. Look at where we're engaging, it's that tension, which means engagement and release in the body. The movements have you do that. You're engaging and then releasing, and then if you do it enough, the idea is that that's going to transfer to your day-to-day life where you're not going to just try to be on. So that tension and release is what creates the energetic integrity, rather than I'm just going to be engaging, or I'm just going to be totally extreme and be off and not disengaged. No, it's that interplay of exhale, inhale, listen, respond.
So is it that contraction that gives you your first clue that you're reacting in a way that's the little self?
You know, sometimes it's the contraction. Sometimes I'm not going to be that alert, and I'm going to start getting into a story of how somebody is pressing me, and they are my petty tyrant, which is a great term, you know. The petty tyrant who, that's the term that, you know, Don Juan talked to Carlos about, somebody in your life who drives you to distraction.
Right.
And that's a really good description, because they'll drive you to distraction from your purpose, from your alignment, from your joy. So the fun part is that, you know, if I start having a story like that, then I get to know, okay, let me check my breath. It's okay. Hopefully I'll exhale pretty soon. Sometimes I want to just keep going, and I want to tell somebody else, no, but look at what he's doing, or she, or them, you know, and then hopefully you catch that somewhere in one of those elements. The dialogue might be what you notice, where you start going into, you know, it's just, there's no point, you know. Who's getting misaligned? It's a lot of times it's this first.
Right.
And then that'll pull the rest of this with it. What Carlos was looking for with Tensegriti is that we are going the other direction, that if there's one part of us that starts to wander, that integrity of our practice, meaning our presence, our awe, will pull that back into line. So if I'm present, then I'll start going, oh, I've been, you know, quietly, maybe for an hour or for a month or for a decade, judging somebody on something. Sooner or later, I need to recognize that's really about me. They may or may not be doing whatever it is I think they're doing, but for sure, it's something that's a blind spot for me if it's driving me to distraction. Why am I so obsessed with that? You know, because it's my unseen part. So they gave me a gift ultimately, that they pushed me to drive me to consciousness.
From my impression from the books is that Don Juan achieved third attention, whereas and Carlos being the putting the golden clasp on that lineage was to reveal it all to the world. So like you say, that kind of secretive nature that they sort of sprung from due to the time that they lived in and came from. It seems that this is a time now for everything to be out in the open. Would you agree that that's what you've taken this lineage to?
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, and it comes right to the theme of this whole series, is the state of the world. And you know, Carlos, Florinda, Donna, Taisha Ablar, Carol Teagues, and his colleagues, who are my teachers and the teachers of my colleagues. They were all, in different ways, you know, made the statement that this is not the time for secrecy. Look, you know, the clock is ticking. Carlos would talk about it's 11:45, and then he would say, you know, it's 5 minutes to 12. There was one time where he would talk about other species are evolving faster than we are. It's not the time for secrecy. It's the time for openness, and if we have some tools that can help humanity, by all means. That was their gift, their gesture, is to bring it out. And so that's how the development of Tensegriti came about. You know, Carol Teagues was talking, you know, looking with Carlos and saying, we got to bring out the movements, because people would go and listen to the lecture and find it maybe enchanting or exciting or interesting, but no, didn't seem to give them a ground to integrate a new perspective into their daily life. So they find, okay, let's see if movement shifts people. Movement, just moving, we can get into movement and overdo that too. The mind can take that on and let's move till we drop, and I'm going to kick higher than you, and miss the point again. So they take that risk. You know, that's part of what they saw when they brought it out is, okay, but then some people are just going to get fixated on that. But maybe some people catch a little more energy and start to take on the self-awareness that it gives you the chance to do. And it's an awareness of, you know, on a moment-to-moment basis, like you asked, are there moments where you become aware, oh, you shifted into a position that's going to be fear-based, the theater of the finite instead of the theater of the infinite. And that's what all this is meant to cultivate, is an awareness, and it's an embodied awareness. It's, Carlos would say, it's not really going to work for us if we pretend that we're just trying to be up here or here. That needs to be connected with here, and maybe the spokesperson for this rather than the other way around, or so.
And breathing out to the right?
That's one way to do it. There are many ways that you can recapitulate. Some people do it walking, and you can shift. But the basic breath that was described in popular books that Carlos wrote is we're breathing from the right shoulder to the left, and then so you can do it either way. You can go from left to right, but the point is that you're going to maybe inhale, take an experience or a memory. I could take, for example, I'm at a meeting and I think I need to correct somebody, or I'm going to interrupt them because, the genius's role is trying to reassert itself. So I'm going to interrupt, cut to the chase, and let them know, no, there's a much simpler way, except that causes a jarring thing for most people and doesn't really work. And so then I might get like, I did it again, and or wow, he really should let me finish. Okay, I've spent some energy there. I sent some energy out from the core. We have vital centers at the core of the body. Okay, I'm going to call back that, and there might be little energetic filaments that I stuck on that person with judgment, really. That creates a kind of glue, sticky thing between me and the other person. So I'm going to pause, realign myself, and I might do this breath, or I might do some of the Tensegriti movements, which can also shift and pull that back. But one way to do it is I'm going to inhale. Okay, so I'm going to think about the judgment I had about the computer person, and see if I can notice what I was doing. Sometimes we're not aware, and I'm for sure the jaw's getting tight. Okay, I've got some awareness. The dialogue was, he's so entitled and he thinks he knows better than everyone else. A perfect mirror for one of my patterns, but I'm not maybe aware. And then I'm going to breathe in, or if you could recall, something really got you if somebody didn't deliver the tapes on time or whatever it was, or pattern that you might have, and then call it up, and then we're going to inhale, call back that energy that we left in that scene with the other person, and exhale anything that we might have taken on. Maybe they sent something back to us that we really don't need. It's not about, hey, take this back, but it's just kind of cleaning up. It's like, okay, I borrowed this book from you, you have my vase, I'm going to give that, we're going to clean, and I'm going to deal with what's mine, and I'll let you deal with what's yours, so I'm not entangled in this unproductive way. Inhale, and then exhale, and maybe I'll do that a few times until I feel it's clear and I'm not so involved. You can do a sequence of Tensegriti movements, and you also feel a similar clarity. You could play that scene another way to recapitulate, to review, get somebody, talk about it as a witness or a friend, and play that scene out and play yourself. and ask them to play the other person that was driving you nuts. And maybe if you could have 2 or 3 people who would play it out. And then do some breathing, exhale, do a Tensegriti breath. Then you could, if you really want to go into theater of infinity, you look at, well, what do I see now that I didn't see 5 minutes ago about this scene? And okay, what would I like to do differently? And another option you have is play the other part. So I would play the computer guy, and I would ask somebody to play me, and I'd give them cues on how to play me, and that's going to give me some more information almost every time. I get to see from a maybe more external view what I'm embodying in that scene, what I brought, And then I could even shift back and, okay, now with all that awareness, how would I play this now? And it's a theater of the magical passes, these positions that come from dreaming, because those are positions of well-being. So when I evolve that scene, ultimately, hopefully, I'll be able to play my role instead of with these kind of positions, the fear-based. I can play it with a more heart-based or centered-based positions.
So that would also be not doing, I imagine.
It definitely ties to not doing. Carlos ultimately said not doing is, if we look at what it really is at its core, if we go to the energetic level, it's interrupting the usual flow of our energy. So it's definitely breaking. We're not going to play that same role.
Right.
So it's totally a not doing. It's like looking at something that it's definitely going to change the way our energy moves.
You're into Tensegriti. You want to help shape human awareness and help us evolve. What's your abstract purpose?
Well, the way to shape anything in the world is to shape yourself, and even shaping it, there's a little element of control that maybe it's about. Carlos would say, we're looking at the purpose is really, can we connect with that flow of infinity? And there's a flow of energy. Energy flows in the universe. Can we quiet ourselves enough to connect with that flow, which can look, there's many different ways that will manifest. But some part of us in our heart of hearts, in our core of cores, knows when we're connected, when we're aligned. So that's the number one purpose. And if you're connected with that flow, you're learning, you're growing. Your perspective is always getting bigger. So that's what he would say. Ultimately, we started out with, if we look at the state of the world and we get in fear, then we're going to immediately go to conflict. And one of the things that Don Juan talked about is the warrior's way, is a way to overcome this, playing the same part over and over. And what are we battling with? He said, well, it's not with other human beings. It's not with our fellow men and women. And he said, ultimately, it's not. It's out there on the horizon, he would say, where we cease to be the human being, and whether we cease to be identified with this one role, is one way to say it. And he said it's not a battle, ultimately. It's an acquiescence, but it's acquiescing to that bigger flow, where you really, I really come into the room and I really want to get a point across in class, and if I see everybody's maybe not responding to that, that's not where they are, I have a choice. I could keep hammering it, or I could shift and find something that's going to be resonant and where they are, that they can receive. And it's not because it's more advanced what I have. It's probably just something that I was more enchanted with about checking in and seeing if that's what they're going to respond to. So that's just a simple example of following the flow. That's the whole purpose. And I was given a name that means flow. The name Найи goes to mermaid and flow and naiad, and it's about flow.
Awesome.
And so I didn't come in super fluid. So it's a journey. I want it to be right. If you're right, that doesn't really always match with flow. But it doesn't mean that we're a will-o'-the-wisp You know, we have no center, and whatever you say, whoever you are. No, it's that resilience and strength. You know, the fluidity and the strength. And for me, also beauty. You know, Taisha Abelard talked about that too: beauty and strength, and resilience, flexibility. So the Tensegriti structure, you know, you look at. Carlos was very inspired by that. That it's organized. Cells, for example, is one example. It's organized by its flexible members. That's really what gives it the shape. We used to think it was the exoskeleton, or not the exoskeleton, the external part of the cell. But they're looking at that. There's these strands in the cytoplasm that are super adaptable, and maybe they make decisions. And that it has an integrity. It's a cell. It doesn't stop being a cell, but it's an adaptable cell. So for me, it's about following that flow, and ultimately that's a joy when I'm aligned with that flow. It might not always be convenient, for sure. A lot of times it's not, but there's something. There's a joy. There's being on purpose. There's seeing, you know, that it's the light shining in my eyes and whoever I'm dealing with. And I know, okay, there's some alignment. Or, hey, the light's shining in me and it's not for them, but I'm not going to get completely unglued by that. I'm going to find a way to respond. That's, you know, and one of the vehicles for me is music. Carlos encouraged us to follow whatever follow your passion, follow what brings you joy, follow what helps you find that alignment. So I played flute. I started out as a music student in school, and I would get bogged down by the competition aspect of it, and ultimately abandoned it for a while. And he's like, well, why don't you play for a different purpose? And I meet many musicians now who have that story. It's like, I'm playing to get, you know, #1 prize, or make somebody else, you know, impress my teacher or whatever, or my parents, or be whatever it is. And it's like, over time I got to discover there's so many different purposes to music. You know, music can be a really direct channel, so to speak, a direct way to bring in that connection with the infinite, because I get to bypass, we all get to, you know, you get to bypass language. Our nervous systems love rhythm. We get aligned, we kind of all agree, and we can really harmonize with each other. If I'm playing an instrument, I have to listen and at the same time to play with the other musicians. It becomes really clear. So that's a vehicle for me too. So that's one of the things that I'm here to share.
Yeah, I started out as a musician as well, and one of the,
I suspected that with the song project.
Right. Yeah, of course. And one of the people that I read when I was younger was G.I. Gurdjieff. Do you know who Gurdjieff is?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm aware of Gurdjieff. I'm not.
No. Well, one of the things that really stuck out to me that he said was that at one time, dancing and song and music was a way of moving their spirit, not an expression of the self, but a way of shifting their sandwich point, basically. And it's become, like you were suggesting, it's become an expression of the self as opposed to what it can do, which is move us into other awarenesses. I never looked at it like that until I read that fellow say that. It's funny, the impact of just seeing something written on a page.
Yeah, it's really important what we see printed. Carlos will talk about, you know, one of the ways to connect with energy also is through writing, and that's one of the things that he did, and he called it readers of infinity, that he is really seeing on the horizon, you know, certain words would come to him. He'd work on a script, and then he would put it on a board, very clean, neat, have it and then he'd go to sleep and let the dream body work on it, let other things come in. Also with the music and the dance, he would hook our attention. You know, we'd do these Tensegriti movements and counting, and there's elaborate sequences, and then the sequence would shift maybe the next day or 2 days later, or there's more added to it. So you have to continually be on your toes to follow and keep up. So hook our attention that way. And then at a certain point, he would turn on, you know, the music. He would find music that really, for him, music that would wake up the energy body, and we'd dance, you know. Um, and that's so joyful when you're dancing with and you have the shared intent to wake up the spirit. I totally agree. I think that's in our DNA. That's in our ancestral heritage. That's really, don't you think that's where music and dance really comes from?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, what did Carlos think of modern times? I mean, you mentioned that he said it's quarter to midnight, 5 to midnight. What was midnight? What did midnight signify for Carlos?
That's a great question. He said, look, we're running out of time for this excessive fixation on me. And he would enjoy himself, observing that around him. He would point it out to us. He would, say you see people walking just, at the intersection, and we are looking down at our toes. He said, because that's where our awareness is. It's supposed to be covering our whole energetic sphere. We're supposed to have this glowing coat of awareness, but it's been sort of chewed down, and we're just down here. He said, even with that little bit of awareness, we went to the moon. So imagine if we can regrow all of this. But we'll run out of time if we don't start to really claim some of this ancestral heritage that we have and claim it, reclaim it. We've taken a journey as human beings. And he would say, that's what Don Juan said, shamanism, is connecting those visible and invisible realms, is a journey of return, So you had that question earlier about, do we have to go into struggle and suffering? I don't know, but it looks like we did in the past, it's a journey of return. And so we've taken maybe a journey of humanity of disconnection. We have taken that journey of, we want to go down in and get more oil, more energy reserves by drilling deep in the earth and messing up the whole, geology there and the energy. That's disconnected. And so for him, it's gone to his extreme, and we have a choice. And that choice isn't so much about convincing other people. It's about each individual making their own decision. Which way do you want to go? And really, one individual, one individual, if we look at awareness as an environment, you said awareness is an environment. If one individual expands their awareness, that opportunity is now there for everyone. And that for him is another energetic fact, that facts derive from seeing energy directly as it flows. And it might not be visual, you might feel it or sense it, but perceiving that directly. So we have a chance to do that, each one individually. But he would say, take all the time in the world, but hurry. Right. Also. Not helter-skelter hurry, but, it's time. We have all the tools. We really do. We have so much information available to us. We do have a growing consensus of people. This project reflects that. People who are waking up, and we wake up maybe in stages, some of us might do it in the blink of an eye, most of us, I think it's stages.
So what did he see as the end? Did he ever talk about an end goal for humanity? Obviously, in a smaller context, the Warriors Party combined their awareness to achieve something together. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that you're into community. You're into the concept of a mass consensus. Mm-hmm. But obviously, there's like 6 billion people on the planet, and 6 billion people aren't going to wake up. Unless something magical can happen to us, regardless of what we're doing. Do you see that there is something happening that doesn't necessarily include the whole? In other words, can things be turned around in this awareness on this world, or is there something that is being worked on from a group of people to shift their awareness, as Don Juan did with their party? Does that make sense to you? What I'm asking? Sorry.
Go ahead.
These are extraordinary times, and it's not a coincidence that Carlos brought these books out in the last 30 years, and he's influenced people that you see. Just even The Matrix, for me, is an obvious influence of Don Juan. I'm sure you're aware of the movie. It's totally his world explained in a nice Hollywood cool film, and a lot of people use that who would never ever read those books or even believe anything that they're saying, but they understand the concept of what that is saying.
Yeah, the thing, the Matrix, there would be one place where a key difference, which would be the Matrix is focused on the one. There's somebody who is the one.
Right.
That model is really, if you ask me, it's obsolete.
Right.
And that's why Don Juan would say the lineage ended with, with Carlos. Right. In their time, what was available was this secretive tradition. It wasn't practical or possible for them to open it out. And so, Don Juan left with a party of seers. Hey, in our time, the word is out. So if we're really looking at a path with heart, is that a path with heart? Freedom for me, and, the hell with you. I don't think so. I don't feel that way. There's such an opportunity for us together. Does that mean that we all 7 billion people, or however many it is right now, have to agree? I don't think so either. But he would talk a lot about critical mass, and that's something that we're focused on. If you can create an agreement, again, and that's the interesting thing. The individual really counts, and I think our communities really count. If we start really functioning in local communities, whatever local is to us, because local, it might be geographically local, or it might be some interest that you have that you share with other people online, and there's online events and things like that. But in the communities that you're a part of, if you're really starting to really act as a community, and that's each individual's choice, hey, I'm going to listen to the collective intelligence, and I'm going to really see the possibilities in each person in the room, rather than starting to rank them by hierarchy of who's cool and who isn't, and who's going to serve me, and but really see what are the possibilities, see their best, see their gifts, see where they light up, and start to work with that. Or if there's somebody else, around you who's really has that ability to see it, to observe and learn from them, and really, that's community. That's really where we came from. We didn't come from this isolation and disconnection, loneliness. Our heritage, and that's what shamanism really was at the root. It's to serve the community. And a community that's really working, the individuals in the community are also nourished and fed, but there's a greater intelligence in that community. If we have communities like that, that also is going to wake up the consciousness of the greater planet. Does that mean if every single person doesn't agree that we're all in trouble? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's critical mass, and I think that I feel that if you can really work effectively from your own alignment, from that joy, and share that with others, you can do so many things. And that's what Carlos, if we're looking at the end goal, there is no end in a sense, but it's to live these possibilities that we have. I mean, we're capable. Don Juan would talk about our instruments, our technological instruments are really just extensions, and they're pale comparisons to our own actual natural organic perceptual abilities. Why not access those while we're here in this amazing experience on this planet, and share this? There's, like he would say, the possibilities they really don't have an end. They're infinite. So why not, sustainable energy, one beautiful dream, food for everybody that they can grow locally and be really nourished by, and we could keep going. There's no end to the possibilities. what if we don't have to solve things through conflict? We could solve through listening, through some other means.
But that takes an elevated, that takes an evolved person. I mean, it obviously doesn't come naturally to us. It seems that that's something that has to be learned. No?
I'm not really of the nature that of the school that the human is inherently, wants to clobber the other human. Maybe I'm wrong. I think there's maybe a blend of, we come in really, we come straight from infinity, and who's not happy around a baby, and the baby is just bringing a lot of joy. Of course, there's challenges too, but this just natural joy that everybody feels uplifted by, that's our heritage to me. That's our base nature, is possibility and discovery. And that being said, we look, we don't even have to look at humans. You look at penguins, and Carol Teagues would point out, the mommy and daddy penguin have one little penguin, and because that's the penguin that knocked off the other egg.
Right.
So maybe that's part of us too. Right. So
well,
we have a choice. Are we going to live out the penguin that is knocking off the other egg part of ourselves? That part of is that it? The theater of the finite, or is it going to be the theater of the infinite? Which role would you play? Yeah.
There's two questions in there, two things there that I haven't gotten into yet, which is will. Have you got much time? Are notice that are we good for a little bit more?
Yeah.
And also, is baby Don Juan as evolved as the Don Juan that achieved third attention through all that struggle and all that joy and all that experience of awesomeness of the pressure of the universe testing us and pushing us, and is
for sure the Don Juan that left at the end of his life has a greater awareness.
Right.
And that's what that's what we come here for, is to expand awareness.
See, that's the quandary that I try to bring up in my interviews, but that's why I bring up conflict a lot, because it seems to me we're all in denial about it. That we say it's not necessary, and yet then everybody proceeds to say how they got to where they are, right? Through you struggling with this other part of you that wants to be contracted and bitter and self-absorbed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we all, and that's what kind of with Marianne Williamson I noticed too, is that at first she'll say no, it's not innate, it's not necessary, and yet she'll proceed to go through how she learned through her struggles of running for office. So it seems like we're not putting it all together here. We're not putting it together what we're doing. Like you said, energetic facts are just obvious. You can't say that we should be some way when we're obviously some way else. So I'm trying to reconcile that with people. I'm trying to understand how people see that.
It's a really great exploration. I think it's somewhere in the middle, really, and that's, if I understand correctly or I've received it correctly, that's what my teachers have tried to convey, is that, you will have some part of you that is going to want to clobber the other sibling because you want all the yum-yums for you, all the attention of the parents and all that stuff, and that definitely would be part of my story. Some people don't come in with siblings, maybe they came in with a different contract. There's the idea that we have certain things that we came to do, and contracts, so to speak, that we sign before we come in. Right. So maybe some people come in with more of that than others. Maybe that is innate. Maybe it is biological, that competition. The question would be, is that it? And the other thing that I notice, and that's been part of my journey too, when I was a child, there are different theories of how to raise children, but I'm no expert on that at all. But there was a culture that the children should be seen and not heard, and they have these impulses that need to be trained out of them, and it's bad. And I think we put that on the animals too. They're savage, and some cultures will put it on other cultures, and I don't really buy that our inherent nature. You had the beautiful Anna Breitenbach. You had that interview with her. I just could cry when I look at the work that she's doing. It's just so beautiful. That's somebody working in silence. And she's not approaching the baboons or the jaguar saying, I'll teach you not to attack and maul. You know, that usually if some creature is attacking and mauling, there's something that happened. If it's really out of balance like that. But, you know, we do have this issue about these little birds that will knock the other eggs out of the nest. So it's, I don't think that's sewed up and tied up with a bow yet. But I do think that it's in between it. And my training, it tells me that there's a choice. And that's called evolution. Could we evolve past those aspects of us that are not so constructive, that don't really enhance our lives, other people's lives, other people's experience? Is it necessary, you know, decades after my younger siblings were born to keep being upset that there's other people in the room that might get more attention than me at a given moment? It's not functional. So, you know, that you hear a lot about fight or flight, and we get into sympathetic overdrive, where the sympathetic nervous system that gets our blood racing and our breath and tells the digestion to take a break. And we spend too much time there, we can't really dream, right? There's some choice in that. That's an involuntary response on some level, but how long do we want to keep doing it? And there's a functional aspect to it, but why do we want to keep holding on to it past its function? That's the question that I think that you brought up. I mean, what you've just said brings up. And it's not really super complicated to decide that maybe it doesn't work to keep holding on tightly to that one role. You know, and like I said, everybody maybe has little slightly different versions of it. But I just don't think that's our total picture either. That's all we are. And we have to bring in some sublime thing that's not there. It's there. And let's enhance it and let's expand it.
Right. Well, you know, it must be a hell of an experience for something to go from everything to encapsulation. So, do you know what I mean? So yeah. I would imagine that if we're, as a baby, if we have the memory and experience of all, coming to this encapsulated experience, I imagine it must be a learning experience. And the concept of mind is true and false at the same time, right? So maybe, you know, it seems like if you just look at it in a very basic way, it all makes sense in a way. Why we would be struggling with this if we are that. Yeah,
that might be part of the conflict. You know, there's some part of us that knows we're eternal, we're infinite. We have these infinite possibilities. There are certain scripts, I think, that we sign on for. It's not completely, hey, you can, you know, people say, well, you can do anything you want. Yeah, but there's certain parameters that I think you signed up for, that you're working with also, that you don't want to miss the agreement. It's funny because we have there's an associate Tensegriti instructor, Teo Alfaro, who's, you know, he's like a spirit brother, and he has wolf sanctuary that he started, these wolf dogs that he created a sanctuary for, and he works with youth and things, and they connect with the wolf, and that helps them connect with their own inner being, their energy body. Very beautiful. He doesn't maybe call it energy body with them, but he and his wife they have a daughter who, their firstborn, who was born in November, and he was telling me she's now getting to where she's pulling herself up to stand up, and she's getting really sometimes very annoyed that she can't just walk like everyone else, you know? So it's like this, and you know, see little kid, why can't I, you know? So, but that's maybe that's a healthy impatience. That's a healthy impatience to grow, to bring in some new skills and abilities, and
but you'd have to call that conflict.
Next.
right? That would still be considered conflict, wouldn't you call it?
It's conflict, and it's that's maybe a healthy struggle, isn't it?
Right.
A healthy effort that she's making. But, there might be places where it really is a big effort, and it might be what we call struggle. So could we eliminate the places where the mind is creating the struggle? Okay, because there will be challenges. Definitely, we all face challenges that maybe I don't think I'm the only one where it comes and you're like, are you kidding? Really? And I've been very lucky. I mean, there's people that face things that, the strength of a human being is just incredible. My parents are the ones that, for example, my mother, Carlos, would say, I thought that I struggled, and he'd be like, I had basically upper middle class life, and my biggest pain was that my sister was cuter than me in my mind, or what, and I'm not meaning to trivialize.
Right. Yeah.
That's something to deal with, but my parents come from a generation, they were born at the end of the Depression. There's some things that they, especially one of them, had to face, that she had to choose every day to really look at what her possibilities were, rather than blame the people around her for what they tried to put on her, what the ways they tried to limit her, things that they would tell her that she was capable of or not, and things that are much more in your face than that, and abusive, and you see people that deal with things that are absolutely just incredible, and they come out strong, creative, constructive people, and you'll see people that don't have that much struggle, and they don't do that much, and at the same time you'll see all the variety. So is there one way? I'm not sure, but for sure there's some struggle that's really not a struggle, that we make a struggle.
Right.
And the good news is that there's a choice on it. Whether my colleague Renata is, going to want to hear my brilliant idea about a project that she started, that'll be one, and I'm going to come in, it's another woman, and I want to give another idea and redirect it. Well, that's irritating, right? But that's an unnecessary struggle.
Right.
Because I could play another part, and it really is a lot more fun if I play another part and go, oh, that's so, and really try to understand what she's doing, really listen. Okay, how can I support, where can I connect with that? What can I bring to that where I really can interface constructively? Where can I overlap with that in a helpful way, rather than you're taking my spot? Back to the egg, pushing the egg out.
Right.
So
it's also a challenge for Renata then, if you just be honest and present her with that option of taking it personally or not, I suppose. Isn't that the dynamics between all people? That we struggle with maintaining. This is what I struggle with my people in my life. Not struggle. It's not a struggle, actually. This is the agreement that I have with the people in my life, is that we try to speak as honestly as possible and let the other person deal with that challenge, as opposed to me having to adjust my expression so that their self-importance won't be tweaked. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I do know what you're saying, and that's, I can't really say whether that's good or bad for other people. I can just say for myself, that's something that that was my aegis for a while.
Right.
It's like, I'm just being honest, and why can't they? And for me, there's a rigidity to that ultimately. And it's not about being dishonest. It's about shifting our orientation. That's different. It's about inhabiting another part of myself that maybe has been over there waiting for something to light it up. And that's the journey of awareness. So I'm not really traveling anywhere if my whole thing is, you know what, that's your self-importance, and you just go deal with it. Right. Sometimes, there are times where if it's a life-threatening situation and you need to move somebody out of the way, or you know, there are extreme circumstances where you just, hey, look, lump it, I gotta go, you know, or I gotta do this.
Right.
But that's, again, it's unnecessary struggle on a day-to-day basis. Hey, that's their job. I'm not the self-appointed teacher of everybody else, really. It's my job. What can I do to create the harmony, especially to create harmony, especially if that's one of my issues is I want to be heard. Guess this Carol Tiggs would say, guess what that means you're going to be doing?
Right.
And I'd be probably listening a lot.
Right.
And she, got it. You know, you can't really understand what you're not, how can you be heard if you can't hear? You're almost working on empty in a way. Not empty, but you're working from only part of your intelligence there, and from part of the greater intelligence. You know, there's all this intelligence around us, beyond the human, all this consciousness. If you keep wanting them to, you know, okay, tree, lump it. You know, this landscape will look a lot better without you. And besides, I always wanted, you know, a flat yard. Hey, that tree's been there for a long time. So maybe there's a way for us to adjust, and everybody gets to share their best together in a different way. Does that make sense?
It does, for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So let me go to my final thing here. Not the
I love
singing
the
yet.
question.
Not the singing yet, but the last question I usually ask.
I forgot about the singing.
Usually what I ask everybody is if you could speak to humanity, what would you say?
If I could speak to humanity, I would say, be willing to consider that what may agitate you can also teach you, that experience can be a mirror for what your expectations are. And I would share that that's been my experience so far, so good. That we can have a sense of humor about it all as well. That if you're seeing something outside of yourself that bothers you, then what is inside of you that you can shift? Because we can't always shift the external, but we can do a lot with the internal. And it's really about allowing ourselves to play more parts in that theater of infinity that we can do every day. Yeah. And exhale. Please remember to exhale so that some new inspiration can come in.